Okay. Okay. So I think now we can get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly live broadcast of our weekly chat session that we have started on 4th of August. So today we are delighted to have Mr. Mike O'Shea. Mike is an Irish adventurer, and he has a lot of experience in working in Hollywood movies, as well as he has traveled around the world. And whenever he goes to different countries, he basically enables local communities for different projects, helping the local communities. And he has done many such projects till so far. And so he has been to Nepal. And when he went to Nepal, he saw a need to help the local people, their local communities, and he helped build a school, and he has done many other projects where the chair Mike will be talking about what he has done, and he will also be sharing about his general experience in Nepal as well as his overall experience traveling around the world. Today, so we have Jen Fenlong, the Senior Vice President of Nepal Society, and Patrick O'Sullivan, Executive Committee member of Nepal Society. They will be hosting today's event, Chat with Mike, and I'm sure this will be a very exciting chat, and Mike has a lot of different stories to tell and a lot of experience to share and a lot of great ideas to share as well. I'm sure his thoughts, his experience from the past, both around the world and in Nepal, will be very helpful for our audience here today. So with that, I would like to pass on to Jane. Please, Jane.
Good morning, Deepish. Good morning, everybody. Mike, can I start by asking you about this whole business of charity projects in a general way? Would you give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I suppose I've been involved very much for the last over 35 years, 40 years, working on charity projects in all sorts of stuff in Ireland, huge amount of stuff in Ireland, and yeah, into multi-millions fundraise at this stage. I think after many decades doing it, I think my attitude has changed dramatically with charity stuff, in that, traditionally I would have raised a lot of funds for big organizations that then would have gone on the ground and done the projects on the ground. And I've just learned over time that I think a lot of these charities, while they have the great will and the great intentions, I just feel that the money isn't getting where I want it to get. So if I raise 100,000, I have no idea how much that 100,000 is going to get to the end project, which is something that has kind of bothered me for the last 10 years. So for the last 10 years, I've pretty much focused on trying to empower local people. And instead of me pushing my will on the local people, I try and talk to the local people, find out what they actually need, and then try and give them the funding to do it. So instead of flying people out from Ireland to go building stuff, I much prefer to try and support it locally, where we employ local people, we buy the products locally. I've done all this thing of, shipping containers around the world and paying all sorts of backhanders and exuberant fees into places like Africa, when I've discovered that actually, if you give me, instead of spending like $6,000, getting a container there and paying all the fees, if you actually give me $1,000, I can go on the ground and buy it. And then the local community benefits from the money on the ground, and I'm getting much better value for my money. And I think by getting involved with communities, they will lead you, and they will help you get good bargains and good deals. And that's, I've done that for quite a few years now, and I really, really like that kind of format of doing it, without becoming a formal charity, which I don't really want to do, where you start getting into all sorts of legislation. I mean, we raise the money through my friends and through different channels. I go on Facebook, I do different things or hold events, and then I turn up in the country with the group I've already working with and carry that forward, Or the other option is I try and select groups. Like one would be a classic example is the Himalayan Stove Project, which is very heavily stove project.
Okay.
The Himalayan Stove Project is a project set up by a gentleman an American called George Bosch, and he provides little mini eco stoves, that save 70% wood in the, so you only use about 30% of the wood to get the same benefit without all of the pollution and stuff in the house and around and
the deforestation.
And deforestation. And that was a great project because, there's not people on big salaries, it's a lot of volunteers involved, and it's providing the stoves, and the funding to the local communities in different areas in Nepal, and then getting the project done. So like now I have a tendency, if I support a project, I will do a lot more homework on the project. And the Himalayan Snow project is just one of those projects that is absolutely, I just love it. I think it's great. It benefits the community, and they do all sorts of little cooperative schemes with it and money lending schemes with the monies they raise off it. And so it has a knock-on long-term effect within communities, not just on a short-term basis,
Yeah, it sounds as though you found that the Nepalese people are extremely resourceful. They are well able to manage their schemes if you give them the funding and perhaps information.
Yeah, my feeling, the reason I love Nepal and just that thing is, I think one, if people look at it, if you go in and look at where Nepal is on the wealth list in the world, it's actually a lot poorer than most African countries. All right.
Yeah.
But I find when you go to African countries, there's so much pressure on to give money, and there's so much, there's so many people involved. It's a complete industry. They've made it into an absolute industry.
Yeah.
It's shocking the waste of money out there. It absolutely disgusts me. But I go to Nepal and you meet the Nepalese people, and they're so humble. They never ask you for anything. They're never looking for anything. Like you said, they're very capable people. They will figure it out themselves. They will look after it themselves. Yeah. And I think it's not that we go in to change anything, but we just go in to assist them to improve.
Give them a leg up.
Yeah. I think they're very humble people. And it's when I went and looked at, I looked at these the wealth indexes across the world and stuff like that, and I started realizing actually Nepal is, a lot of Nepal is a lot poorer than the rest of the world, and
way down.
They never beg.
No.
We don't have all these Catholic missions out there helping them.
And that's why the aid is in Africa and India, because of the Catholic missionaries. And the links with Ireland.
And I do think that if we support, if you look, it's interesting to look from a perspective of trying to help people that are actually helping themselves, that aren't looking for it. And I think you can have a much bigger impact for a much lower cost and much lower investment. You can have a huge, if I take 100 grand to Africa, what I can do with it versus what I take 100 grand to Nepal. I mean, it's a completely different thing, and there's nobody in Nepal. I haven't found anyone in Nepal, any of the kind of bits and pieces I worked on. There's nobody trying to like shuffle a bit off to the side or looking after this or that one. It's like basically what I give to the community goes to the community, and that's.
And what areas what areas in Nepal are you actually focused on?
So the last lot of stuff I did there, which was the school and stuff following the earthquake. So we'd say what I did that time was, it was just directly after the earthquake. So I've been working on the Himalayan Snow project for maybe 4 or 5 years at that point, and I'm an ambassador for that organization. And then when the earthquake happens, I decided then to try and I contacted some friends out in Kathmandu. I've got some friends out there, Sarita Lama, who works with TAN, and her husband Ian Wall, who's from the UK, they run a company called Off the Wall Trekking. So I spoke to them. I said, look, where are we at and what do you need? And they spoke particularly about a village called Megre, Megre. It's about 7 hours outside Kathmandu. And that village at the time had been cut off. They had been cut off from the road. The bridges were gone, and it was obviously coming into monsoon time. So the big issue there was really some tin sheeting and some plastics. And this is a very interesting example of working with big charities or trying to work with big charities and what happens. So I won't mention the charity, to be fair, but I had managed to, through another organization I'm involved in, I had managed to actually secure the use of a helicopter for an afternoon. So my plan was to try and fly lots of tarpaulins into a village. Now, obviously in Kathmandu, they were all sold out. We couldn't get them. But on the tarmac in the airport in Kathmandu, it was full of all of these supplies by a major international charity. So I contacted the charity and I said, can I please buy some of this stuff from you? I don't want it for free. I'll buy it. I've got a helicopter sitting. I've got access to it sometime next week. Can I buy the stuff off you? I can fly it to this village that's trapped. And I ended up with radio silence. So we ended up having to send people into India. So we got some people to go into India and buy the stuff in India and bring it back. So, and that was just a classic example of, we had a resource available to us, and I couldn't get a major charity didn't want it for free. I was willing to pay for it. And a lot of that stuff sat on the tarmac for 6 months and never moved. It's just mind boggling. So that time what we did is I went basically very quickly went on Facebook and put an appeal out to friends and colleagues and family and stuff. and ended up raising, in excess of 30,000 euros. So the initial money, we transferred some money out to get plastic sheeting and get some tin and stuff like that bought. We transported that to the roadhead, and then the villagers came down and actually carried it back up to the village. But obviously, I only spent what we needed to spend to get that much work done. And then we had a lot of money left over, but as we committed the money to that village, I then went and spoke with Ian and with Sarita about, what we would do with the rest of the money that we committed to the village. So obviously quite a bit of the school, not all of the school, but quite a lot of their school had actually collapsed in the earthquake. Because obviously a lot of the building quality out there is just stone, and it's just stone and mortar. So, any sort of, it's very basic structural stuff in the remote villages. So we then went and we got some people, an engineer involved. We designed the school, but we actually designed it with concrete columns. So we went like 2 meters into the ground. So we've built a structure that is a safe space.
And a ring beam. Did you put a concrete ring beam in?
Concrete ring beams. It's the full Monty. Yeah. So it's basically it's a structure that can take the hammering. So at least they've got one structure within the school area that they can now utilize as that. And that was great. It was a great project to be involved in. And I did it. That was all done remotely. It was a huge amount of it was done remotely. And then when I went back out for a trek, I was lucky enough to tie in, and they held the school opening up until we got there for the trek. So we obviously did the Everest Base Camp trek, which is amazing. Obviously I was bringing a group into Everest Base Camp, a very famous runner, very famous Kerryman, another Kerryman called John Lenihan. John had put a group together, John, the mountain runner. He'd put a group together. So I brought them to Everest Base Camp. And then afterwards we went to Megray for the school opening. And we got to stay, we went and stayed in the village with some of the local community, and we kind of split her out around the different houses and stayed in the community. And it was actually quite funny because it wasn't the fact of the school opening, it was the fact of doing that. That ended up being a bigger highlight for everybody than the actual Everest trek. The Everest trek was the dream.
I can understand that.
That was the dream, and everybody wanted this dream, and they wanted the achievement, which they did. And it was great. And
but to actually meet the people and see their lives and be involved is much more. It's a much deeper experience.
Yeah, we went to a village. Yeah, we went to a village, and we had dinner in the evening at the different houses, and we hung out
and dancing and some rakshi.
Yeah, but I won't get into that one. A long day the next day. But, but it's just, when you get out of, I think the Everest trek, is, people see the Everest trek and they look at, that's most of what they see in Nepal. And if you go the other way.
Oh, there's so much more to Nepal. So much.
It is a very poor country. And when you get out, get away from Kathmandu, get away from the Everest trek is like, I was first in Nepal in 1991, and then I wasn't back there for nearly 20 years. Yeah. And the first time I went in there, it was little tiny tea shacks. There was none of this accommodation. We camped all the way in. Yeah. We carried a lot of our gear, and it was a completely different experience. Now I go back and I can stay and I can get, almost have air conditioning. I can drink beer and I can, have a lovely meal.
Apple pie up in Namche. Yeah.
You can, there's 3 Irish pubs along the route now, and there's, bakeries, and there's all, so it's a completely different animal. But there's huge wealth on that route. That route is a very, very wealthy. It's probably the wealthiest.
Well, the Solo-Khumbu region is the wealthiest region in Nepal.
Yeah.
For very obvious reasons.
Yeah, and when you step away from that, and you get out into the real Nepal, you get to see, what's happening in the villages, what the roads are into those villages, the bus services. I mean, it's remote. It's very, very poor. They live a very, very simple life.
Yeah.
And so bringing something like some money in to build a school or to give them a decent facility to do that, I think, you can have a huge impact on a community long term. It's not just it's just not a snap in the pan. And for me, like, that was great because the village bought into the whole thing. I met with the elders of the village, everyone bought into what we had done. And then obviously with Ian on the ground there and Sarita, they were a fantastic help from my point of view. Like, I didn't want to be back and forward the whole time, organizing stuff. So they took on that for me. And it ended up being a fantastic experience, and just the opening of the school and going to meet the kids. And
that's really,
it's amazing. It's amazing.
Just to mention, INET, the Irish Nepalese Education Trust, we're entirely volunteer directors. Nobody gets a penny. If you go out to Nepal, you pay your own fare.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, and that's and I
And
agree
that's
with you.
what it's all about. All
Yeah.
the money goes to the particular projects.
Yeah, and I think that's I suppose it's a different debate for another day, but I do think that charity, the unfortunate part is charity is huge business now.
Yes, it is, and
It's a massive business, and it's its own thing, and I think you and Robbie, what you've done with that organization and the way I do my stuff, I haven't put mine into an official organization. It's a very loose. What I do is very loose because I want the flexibility.
yeah.
And I go to different countries and do different things, from Chernobyl to Ireland to different countries.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I like to do. But I think what you're saying is this thing of like,
but we're very small, and we stayed small. We're in a very local area in the Solo Kumbu, and we feel our work is almost complete there.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want us. What has happened recently is that the local people are finding charities coming in with political or religious agendas, and they're pushing things on the people that the people don't want. An American group came in, built a school classroom, said that there was a gender issue with girls. It's a co-ed school. There's never been a gender issue. Took photographs of just girls sitting in the classroom and said they had done this. And the building was built with kind of sand and gravel in plastic bags. It's now deteriorating. It looked great when they built it and painted it white and blue. And they're all over the internet. If you Google the particular area we're in, you get this school. And that there are gender issues, and it's not true.
Unfortunately, but like you said, I think there's a lot of political issues there, and that's why, for me, certainly, even when I was in Africa, it was interesting to watch certain groupings coming to it. There was a school, particularly, I worked with for quite a while. So I built the orphanage linked to that school, and I built a kitchen for them, and I built toilets, and I did all sorts of weird and wonderful things to them. But it was funny when I went to them the first time, and I spoke to Zuma, who ran the school, and I said, Zuma, what do you need? And he was looking at me like I had four heads, because he was so used of just being given stuff and told what he needed. That he couldn't believe that I was actually asking him, what do you need? What do you need? And it was they were getting Walkmans, they were getting all sorts of weird and wonderful things, instead of getting desks that the kids are sitting on the floor. So the first thing I did was supply desks, which is what the kids needed, instead of Walkmans that now was an expense, because now they had to buy batteries, which they don't have the money for. So I think a lot of charities are well-meaning, but unfortunately, I think there has to be a disconnect between what we do in our own country and what happens in another country. When you step to another country, you need to, look at their culture.
We can't impose different values on these people.
Yeah, and I think that's something that gets very mixed up with people. I think people are trying to help and they're trying to offer a good solution. But I do think that it gets carried away, and that's why I love Nepal, and it's something I will continue to do some work with over the next number of years, is because the people are so humble. They're not asking you for anything, and if you come with something and you're offering to help and support them, it's a much greater. I think it's a much greater experience and a much better feeling for me, in the sense that I know every penny is going to go to the school or whatever I may do. And I know that everything is going to be supported by the community, and we're giving the community what they want. And I think, they haven't, like we said, they haven't been exposed to a lot of the big charities. So I think they come from a much better place and they're just a very humble people, and.
Well, I don't know why you keep using the word humble. I know what you mean. They're not aggressive, and they're not aggressively asking for anything, but they're proud people up in the hills.
Oh, very proud, phenomenally proud. Yeah,
they really are.
Yeah,
and they're well off. They're well off up there, in that they have land. I mean, I have a young woman living with me here, going to university here, and she will tell you that they own their lands. They have food security.
Yeah.
Now they're threatened by the climate change thing that's coming on, but they've never starved.
Yeah, and I know I'd agree with you 100% in that. Yeah, like you said, they've made the best of exactly what they have. They've got shelter. They use what's available to them for shelter. They grow their own vegetables.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, they're I think they're living the, a lot of people in the Western world have this whole idea of, this like idyllic lifestyle where you have a house,
Yeah.
you grow, you're independent, you grow your own veg, you have your own cow, you have your own stuff.
Yeah.
That's the way the Nepalese actually live. They have
Well, can I
that
just
already, you know?
add to that? Because they enjoy living up there, and it
Yeah.
is, you know, there's always a drain down to Kathmandu and off to the Gulf states and all the rest of it. We decided, well, we asked them. I must mention our contact there. He's a man called Dan Kaling Rai. And he was on the Irish Everest expedition, and he was on the one before it in Manaslu as a cook boy initially and worked his way up. And then when the Everest expedition finished, there was spare money, and the lads passed it on to him for his education, and he became a teacher. And then we came in contact with him in the late 90s. And he has done absolutely brilliant work. But the latest scheme is government-backed beekeeping. And they have 50 hives up there now. And they grow kiwis as well. And they produce about 500 kilos of kiwis, which they sell. They can't not sell them. All the local people want them, and people passing by, you know, and they're now, the younger men have motorbikes. They can get down to Kathmandu. It's all giving them a sustainable lifestyle, but with the, you know, the added bonus of the modern, the phones, the transport, and all of those things, which is what they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a bit like all of us in that everyone aspires to, you know, improve your life or improve your life, the lives for your children or, you know, your grandchildren.
They love living up there, and they should be encouraged to stay.
Yeah.
Let's ask Patrick, because I feel I've talked too much. Patrick, let's have some of your views.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm a little nervous to join in this conversation with two obvious experts, but and particularly when I'm coming from a background of having worked with a very large international NGO in Nepal. I was there from 85 to 88 in the Midwest, in the Berry Zone, so-called then. And we actually had a project called Smokeless Chulos, which sounds like the eco stoves that you're talking about, Mike. The idea was that children and parents got eye infections and respiratory infections because of the smoke in the house. So having a chimney on it got the smoke away from the room where they were living, but it also was a more efficient use of the wood. So we were we were there with the idea, but anyway,
you were well ahead of your time.
It's still going on.
Yeah, no, it's amazing that it's great to hear. I wasn't aware that there was a project doing that back in the 80s there. So that's, you know, it was a very different Nepal back then, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Back when you say back in the 80s, it sounds, anyway, I think, yeah, no, I'm really enjoying listening to you, because I think a lot of what you're saying obviously makes huge sense. This idea of working with the locals in an appropriate way, which makes it more likely to be sustainable. I think, you know, I think, and responding to their felt needs, their desires, rather than coming in as some nationalities do with huge electronic equipment which can't be powered from the electric system and things. You know, I mean, there are huge mistakes made in aid terms in not listening to the local voice. So I think that's a hugely important direction to go in. And so what, you know, I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think I suppose one of the other things I think is trying to look at, you know, just forgetting aid for a second, or, you know, bringing money out for aid. I think of, you know, just simple things of like trying to take an element, you know, promoting to trekking groups and maybe encouraging a lot of the, let's say, companies coming out of Ireland and other places, is to start looking at tagging on, you know, 3 or 4 days outside of Kathmandu, where you head a different direction, or you go to a cookery school, or you go to a plantation, or you go to just a remote village. And not necessarily giving them aid, but actually going up there and maybe like paying to stay in someone's house or paying someone to have a little bit of dinner with them. And I think it's something that without it, it's it's not going to cost big money to do it, and people are already there. They've committed to flying there, so it's not a big expense. If you stay on for 3 or 4, like we did on the last trek, I got the people, everyone agreed to stay on for like 4 days, and then we went off and we did this little visit. It didn't cost us a lot of money because we hired a car, which obviously we paid for, but then to stay locally, and then we were staying for free, obviously, but we would have been quite happy to pay whatever it was, and I think it would be a really simple way of divesting some of the money that goes up to the Solo-Khumbu and giving it out to slightly remoter areas, within the Kathmandu valleys, or a little bit further out, and just encouraging people instead of going to like some people just jump on a plane from Kathmandu and go to Pokhara, and they go and they have their happy time there and drink beer and paraglide or whatever they're going to do, and maybe look at trying to encourage companies, which wouldn't take a lot of effort, maybe to get some of the companies to look at adding 2 or 3 days on that bring them to a remoter part of Nepal that hasn't been touched massively by tourism. And it's a fantastic experience. I mean, I think, and it's something that, if we could encourage that,
I think that's very, very important, because, you can see that the majority of aid never goes outside the Kathmandu Valley, without being rude to people, that's always a problem, is trying to get help, assistance to people that are in remoter parts of the country. And so any way to do that, to diversify the approach, and as you said, they are very proud people, and so it's not charity they're looking for. They're very happy to do things that will earn them money, and and benefit both parties,
Yeah, I think and it's a good thing to do, maybe to encourage future people going trekking to Nepal and stuff like that, to go and do things like this. Just go a different direction than the Pokhara, the Khumbu, when you finish with it, and go and experience those things, because that's what people they're amazing places. They're beautiful. They're very very enlightening and spiritual, or whatever you want to call it, for everybody, and in different ways. And but I do think, for what I've seen from people, when you take them to these other places, they actually almost get a bigger kick out of it than actually doing the main thing they went there for, and it can be a lovely treat at the end of a trip. And like you said, I think it's going to encourage, you're not giving charity, you're offering, you're paying for a service that people are giving you. And that's what I find with the Nepalese, is that they're quite happy to do that, not looking for charity, that they want to work for it, and let them do it,
Well, the thing is, I'm sure you're aware of the fact, and Deepa, who lives here, tells me West Nepal is abjectly poor.
Yeah.
They have terrible problems out there, and nobody goes to Western Nepal. Dalpa was fashionable for a while, but it isn't even Dalpa. It's down on the Terai, is really, really poor. They have serious problems down there.
Yeah.
No, I've never experienced it. I've never been in that region.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it was, I worked in the Midwest, so we were next to the far west, which was inaccessible basically in those days, and you can still only really fly in there, I think, to the northern parts of it anyway. But I think, that's just an extreme example of the fact that the difficulty of getting aid out of the major centres. As you say, the east of the country, they got a lot of British support, I think, and they're probably that little bit more developed. But there's still huge poverty on the way up to Kanchenjunga and things. They are very poor, and it's not like the Solo-Khumbu.
No,
when you trek around there,
is the richest area.
Yeah,
by far. It's richer than Kathmandu. So these are the kind of problems you really need to get on the ground information.
Yeah, I suppose Well, the other thing too is trying to look at, I think Deepish is trying to do it there, and some other people is trying to, like Nepal is very much looked at as a trekking destination, so you obviously,
and he wants to diversify. Yeah.
And I think it's that thing of, there's a lot of like people who have no interest in trekking to Everest Base Camp, but they love walking and they love hiking, but there's so much of that in other areas, and it's trying to, I suppose, promote that as something that's viable, that you can actually go to a remote area. Now, obviously, the downside is going to remote areas. You lose an element of that comfort that some people want, but certainly a lot of
but you can have comfortable camping.
Yeah,
we camped the first couple of times we went out, and you can have very comfortable camping.
Yeah, and I think it's just, I suppose it's trying to maybe get a trekking company or getting somebody that will take on.
You need a Nepalese trekking company to do.
Oh yeah, but you need a Nepalese. Well, I think you can get that on the ground quite easy there, and they'll organize that.
Run by Nepalese.
Yeah, but you need somebody at this end promoting that to the general population, not just the big hiking clubs and the big stuff. It's just the general population trying to, bring groups out there. Certainly even the cooking stuff. I think I spoke to Deepish about that before. I mean, Nepalese cooking is absolutely just amazing. I mean, some of the food they do is just spectacular. And it's probably something I would do. I'm probably not ready for it yet, but maybe in another 10 years, it's probably something I would go to Nepal to do, just to go and learn, to cook their style, because their flavors are so good.
I have an in-house excellent. She is a marvelous cook, so I know what you're talking about.
Okay, I'll ring you the next time I'm in Dublin. So
do love to see you. Really would, and you would enjoy meeting Deepa.
Yeah,
she's a Rai as well. She's from the Solo Kumbh.
Okay, cool.
We're also blessed with there's several very good Nepalese restaurants now in Dublin and around the country. Really.
Let me recommend the one in Dalkey.
Well, I find it difficult to. I mean, I have a few friends or people I know in a few of these houses, so I tend to just. I think they're all great. I mean, the food is wonderful. Yeah.
It's funny, just going back to the story, when we were doing when we went to Amon Blom in '91, we had this young runner, that was doing all our stuff for us, Angelu. And actually Angelu is in Ireland. He's married to an Irish lady. I think he's married to an Irish lady, and has a restaurant in Laois or Port Laois or somewhere in around that neck of the woods. I met him. It's probably 10 years ago. I met him in Ireland, and it was just amazing to, someone I had seen in 1991 in Kathmandu, and he spent 2 months up on the side of the mountain with us, and then to meet him sitting in Ireland, going, well, actually, I've got a restaurant in Ireland. It's like, what, So
well, I think what part of Kerry are you from, Mike?
I'm from a place called Beaufort, just outside Killarney originally.
I know it.
And then
on the INET contact, we always say it was people who enjoy mountains coming out from Ireland, meeting mountain people.
Yeah.
That's what we found was the link.
Yeah.
And I found that the lifestyle, when I went out first, there were echoes, because I'm quite old, as you can imagine. There were echoes of what I'd experienced in the countryside around Listowel. It wasn't all that strange.
Yeah, I think if for people, even for myself, like, I mean, it's like, if I think back to rural parts of Kerry, like, back to, Glencar and Black Valley and different places like that, and you take that back to the 80s and stuff like that, growing up around there, and taking that out to Nepal, it's quite similar. It's quite similar.
Yeah, and the people.
Yeah, I mean, you go to the back of the Bride Valley like 25 years ago. It ain't that far away, far different from it.
From Jack.
Hang on a minute here. I know I don't have the accent, but my dad was from Beaufort, and we went to Beaufort we used to go on family trips from England in the 1950s. That's the first memories of Beaufort I have, and Kerry. And you're right. I mean, and what's amazing is how things can come on so rapidly. And so there's that hope for these rural parts of Nepal. If you can get a road in, a school and a clinic maybe,
Yeah.
and have a market, then that's going to keep people in that area. And
Yeah.
that's real development, is to
Yeah.
to make life sustainable and attractive to people, so they don't go to Kathmandu and
Yeah.
and whatever,
Or the Gulf states.
or the Gulf states. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They can come to Ireland.
If you can get a visa.
Right, Mike, do you think we should wrap up? It's coming up to 12.
Yeah, no, I
You've
think
been
we've had a good
involved,
chat.
Mike,
Thank
what
you.
you have to say, huh?
I suppose, yeah, just from my point of view, I think what Deepish and your group are doing, you know, I think it's fantastic to see that sort of level of promotion for Nepal, and hopefully we can all have a small effect on improving lifestyles out there, and you know, assisting people in Nepal to achieve what they want to achieve, not what we want to achieve, what
Exactly.
they want to achieve.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's an important message to get across.
That's
Is that
the key to it.
yeah, you're better off sending, like I always say, you're better off sending 100 quid to a group that can do something on the ground there locally,
Yeah,
than spending 3 grand going out there, flights and accommodation, and
Yeah.
feeling good about yourself, but you've done
Yeah.
nothing and left nothing, you know, traceable. So, and it's like, you know, like projects that you do with the school, you know, I would promote obviously the Himalayan stove project as well. I think it's something that's fantastic. And it's even like simple things I do now, you know, for the last number of years, is like, you know, for, you know, close friends who've died, or, you know, presents for people. Quite often I don't, you know, send reeds or flowers and stuff like that anymore. I actually buy a stove for them.
oh, very
And
good.
I present someone,
Yeah.
you know, I give them, well, I present someone in Nepal gets a stove, but I mean, I do things like that. And I mean, we can all do simple things like that, instead of,
Yeah.
you know, we spend a lot of money on weird and wonderful things. And I think, you know, that's something I've been doing for the last number of years, is supporting the Himalayan Stove project personally through stuff like that, or, you know, trying to encourage other people to get involved in that, and like, or buying, you don't have to buy a full stove, buy a part of a stove, you know,
Yeah.
and make a donation to it. And then you're having a real effect. What I think what affects a lot of people is they don't see the effect they're having. You know, I mean, we grow up in social media where everybody wants to see it on video, and you know, for me, I think I'm in an age in life where I'm happy to know, for me, that I've actually helped somebody. I don't need to see how I help them or the effect it has, but I'm quite happy to help somebody that's over there, and I can do that, you know, without it. And I think I enjoy that. I enjoy the fact that it's a bit anonymous. I don't need to be involved in it. I've done my homework on the project. And I think that's something I would say to a lot of people is, do your homework on the project.
Yeah,
Okay?
get to really know. Could I just put one last thing? I've become very interested. They have a very, very rich culture in, you know, diverse cultures in Nepal. And the Rai people, they have their own language, their own dances, their own beliefs, they're animists. And I've been encouraging them to do what we did with the Folklore Commission, to write down, because it's fading, it's beginning to disappear. And the more impact we have from the West, the quicker it'll disappear. Everybody has phones, all the rest of it. So we have this little scheme going where we pay tiny amounts for the teachers to give the kids, you know, the notebooks and pencils, and go home and ask their granny the questions.
That's
and
great.
We've
Great
begun
idea.
with agricultural questions and various traditions. You know, it's just a small thing.
But yeah,
I
that sounds
think
like,
that's
it sounds like an
simple.
exciting project. And again, you know, that's going to have a long-term, you know, it's going to have a long-term return to the communities. That's, you know, I think that's a great initiative. So fair play to you for that, you know, it's great.
You know, I mean, given our own experience with the Irish language.
Yeah, I mean, Ireland is a classic example of it. You know, we've lost a lot of stuff, but I mean, you know, like having said that, there's a lot of people out there that also that are working quite hard to gather stuff for, you know, individuals and local communities, and you know, the you know, different organizations in the country doing it. But I mean, I think if you can encourage, you know, we've seen these things that I suppose have affected our country, and it's great if we can, you know, direct them or help them to, you know, like you said, preserve some things and do whatever, so they have the record for the future, you know. So
I'm trying to set up a link with the Irish Folklore Commission, you know. So anyway, that's, I think that is as important in many ways. But I'm talking about a relatively wealthy community, both in the community spirit and landowners. I know it's not like that all over Nepal.
No, most
I'm well
definitely
aware
not.
of that.
Most definitely not.
You know, it's very specific. Patrick, anything, does, Deepish, do we have time for Patrick to round up?
Yes, I have a couple of questions for Mike. So Mike, you have been to Nepal for trekking and different things. So you just mentioned about like trekking, like needing to promote different trekking sites in Nepal. So do you have any particular thoughts, your suggestions on how Nepal should promote tourism?
Tourism is always a hard thing. It all depends, I suppose, on the market you're going to and what you're offering. And I think maybe something that to promote stuff on a short-term basis to work with some of the existing trekking companies, both in Kathmandu and internationally, and encouraging them to try and promote little add-ons to their Everest trek or to their Annapurna trek, you know. So where you've got international groups coming in, you know, that are coming in from whatever, wealthier nations, for want of a better word, you know, rather than people on budget treks, but where they can add 3 or 4 days on and maybe looking at stuff that's within, you know, half a day's drive or a day's drive of Kathmandu, where you can go and maybe experience a local village, experience, you know, some schools, some farming communities, and different plantations, stuff like that. I think if we, you know, a quick way to do it would be to encourage people that are already coming. Look at the people who are already coming and try and get them to maybe expand their range of services within Nepal, you know, by simple add-ons for 1 and 2 days.
Right, right, yeah. Okay, so another thing is, so you have been like you work in Hollywood movies. It's a big project. So pulling those projects to Nepal in order to promote tourism. So what sort of things that you could suggest, maybe to the government of Nepal, because this is not going to happen at organization level or individual level.
Well, it's very funny. You know, I did contact you earlier this year about that. Yeah. And we were very close to having a major production coming to Nepal, you know. And unfortunately, COVID right. knocked that one on the head. So we were very close to, instead of me sitting in Morocco, I would be sitting in Nepal now. But unfortunately, with COVID and the way COVID happens, we ended up with, you know, picking a different destination. I mean, with regards to the film industry and stuff like that, you know, if you can get a film to any country, it has an effect for 30, 40, 50 years. It's not short term. You go to a place like Jordan, even Ireland is a classic example. Ryan's Daughter was a film that effectively was actually a flop as in the box office. Yeah, it was a flop. But there are still people coming to Dingle looking for the Ryan Daughter sites. That was filmed in 1969. We still have people coming to Dingle to look at that. You've got The Quiet Man in Mayo. You've got, you know,
it has Excalibur.
Yeah, it's a huge effect. So for the Nepalese, it is something. It's kind of another conversation to have maybe afterwards. But I mean, certainly from the point of view of, you know, putting Nepal on the map or putting sections of Nepal on the map, it's something that can be focused on. And it's very complex in the sense of, you know, there's all sorts of rebates and there's all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So it's something that, you know, we could certainly have a conversation with the Nepalese government about promoting it to different countries. And, you know, certainly I have a network of people I can certainly promote it to. It all depends on the story, and it depends where the story goes and selling it to the right people. But you get one movie to Nepal and it will have an effect on it for 30 years, you know, if you can get the right one to move there, you know.
Yeah, so based on your experience, do you see Nepal as a destination for shooting movies? Right. Does it have what it takes based on what Nepal has to offer?
Certainly on the mountain end, you know, there's obviously, it's got a very specific, you know, terrain there that leads itself obviously to mountaineering style films and stuff like that, which some stuff has been done there. But certainly anything that's kind of the period stuff from, like, kind of, if you're trying to get something like from the 80s or, you know, the 60s, the 50s, the 60s, you know, if you want that kind of market feel and you want that kind of stuff. So it certainly has, you know, you've got lots of temples, lots of different, you know, so there is an element of stuff there. And, you know, that is something that could be very easily, you know, put together in the sense of, you know, you can put a package together and make it you know, you need to make it easy for the likes of location managers who are looking for stuff. So you have a, you know, a website that's available with all sorts of pictures of valleys, bridges, rivers, your temples and stuff like that. So they can get in, have a look at this, at all of these images and see, does it fit? Because if they find something that ties into their script and ties into their stuff, then they're interested in going there, you know, and then they will come there and look and look at the locations and see how it all ties in and can they make it work. And I think Nepal has a lot of unique stuff, but it's just a case of really finding, you know, it's finding the right script and getting the word out there. And the only way you'll ever find the right script is to get the images out there, get the stuff, the availability out there, and get all that out there. I mean, if it's a big production, certainly they will travel. And like I said earlier this year, unfortunately, COVID, you know, potentially killed the project for Nepal, you know, which was a shame because I was quite excited. I thought it was going to happen, and then last minute COVID put a halt to it, you know. So I think, you know, there's work to be done there, but it's a very specific, it's very different than the tourism industry. It's a very specific way of doing it and promoting your country to the film world. But I do think that Nepal has some very unique stuff, okay, that can be promoted, and it's just to get that out there to the correct people. And then once the correct people know what's there and what's available, you just gotta wait, you know. They'll know a project that's going to fit it, and when they find the fit, it just happens, you know. So that's pretty exciting in that sense. If you can get the right message across to these people and availability, and obviously there's other issues involved as well. But I mean, yeah, I think Nepal could be a very, very good destination for certain types of movies, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think maybe we can have a chat about this offline, and maybe I can try and get connected with the relevant agencies in Nepal, organization, authorities in Nepal, see how we can promote from the movie's perspective. As you said, if there is a movie shoot in Nepal and it is a hit around the world, and that's a big source of income, in fact.
Like when a movie comes to town, I mean, first of all, they leave a huge amount of money there when they're shooting, you know, with accommodation, transport, all sorts of weird wonderful things. And then it's the legacy that follows it for the next, if it's a really, you know, a high profile movie, you've got a legacy there for the next, you know, 3-4 decades that will just have a knock-on effect. Like, it's like, you know, it's like Star Wars and all of these, you know, different movies that go around the world. I mean, there's people traveling to sets that were shot, you know, in the 80s, and people still travel to see those sets, you know. So it does work, you know, and it certainly has an effect. So it is certainly an area to do some work on, and certainly, you know, it's something I can help with, certainly in making people aware of what's available, you know. But there's some work to do before you present it to people, but that's something we can talk about offline.
Yeah, so we'll do that. So now, so earlier you mentioned about Nepalese food, right? So do you see now? I'm personally interested in promoting Nepalese food outside Nepal, in Ireland and the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. So any thoughts on what would be the best way to do that, right? So restaurant, of course, we have like 15 around restaurants, and so that's and more restaurants are in the process of getting set up, established. So what I'm interested to know, like your view and others' view as well. So what would be the best way? Because Nepalese Chinese food, as you can see, so you work in Hollywood movies. So Hollywood movies, you watch, maybe if you watch 10 movies, in 5 movies, you will say, people say, okay, let's get Chinese today, right? So I would like to see at some point where in the movies, actors, they will say, okay, let's get Nepalese today. Momos today, and so on. So that's the kind of point that I would like to get to, man. It's not easy. It's easier said than done. So first thing is you have to put that taste palette into people's mouth first, so that they know what.
Well, I think actually, and I was just reading an article the other day, and I think we have a very unique thing in Ireland, okay, which is we've got a couple of unique things in Ireland that we can you can work on promoting. So as far as I'm concerned, just bring momos to everybody, okay, and we'll just eat them all, okay. That's the way to go. But you know, you look at Super Value. So Super Value have a thing, but I think just last week they announced like 5 or 8 new companies that they're going to promote in all of their stores. So you know, there's and in Dingle, actually, just ties back to Dingle. It's a Dingle based thing, the Dingle Food Festival and Blas na Héireann. So, I mean, if you can get somebody that's going to make, pick a product like Momo's and bring those to Blas-na-Herne, where they get recognized as a food product that's made here in Ireland. It's a Nepalese recipe, but it's made here in Ireland. Bring it to some of the award stuff. So you start getting recognition for 1 or 2 products, okay? And if somebody can make those at scale, you can then go to SuperValue. Lidl do it as well, I think, where they promote specific products.
They do. Yeah.
There's very interesting schemes out there that you go to some of the food festivals, you go to some of the stuff, get a product recognized, and then try and get that product into the likes of the SuperValue. They will help a business set that up. They do the marketing with you, they do all the training with you. They set you up to do the business, and then they will carry, if the product gets selected, they will then carry it in their stores. So there's actually an interesting, there's some great, I think, initiatives in Ireland to help not just promote Irish food, but to promote other foods. That's a great way of, it's something, if you can pick a country like Ireland, which is, it's a small country, but, as a country, we punch way above our weight with lots of stuff. If you can get a food product into something like that in Ireland and get it into like SuperValue or Tesco's or whoever's running one of these schemes, it's very easy, I think, then to look at taking it bigger, So it's an interesting way to introduce Nepalese food to an Irish audience.
And also you've got the bonus that much of Nepalese food is vegetarian. And as you know, vegetarianism has become much more popular. Vegetarian momos are delicious.
Yeah, so the good thing about Nepalese food, as you might know, right, means the local cuisine, actually, Newari cuisine. So we have 84 different varieties of cuisine. So momo would be one of them. Like there are a lot of things that taste different things that haven't been introduced outside Nepal. So momo, of course, is one of the most popular cuisine in Nepal. And that's a cuisine that outside Nepal people know about it. So what we plan to do, personally, what I would like to do is first get the momo out there. So let more people know about the momo, and then gradually introduce new taste one by one, right?
Yeah, I think you've got a product with, like, the one thing about the momo is it's a great product. You can travel easily. You can carry it in your lunchbox. You can do what, you don't have to just have it for dinner, or you don't have to have it. And I think it's a product that, every time I go to Nepal, it's all I'm thinking about when I arrive in the door, like arriving Kathmandu, and that's the first thing I want to go and get, So it's actually, so from that point of view, if I could walk into SuperValue or Lidl or Aldi or whoever and buy that stuff, I would be buying it on a regular basis. So I think, there's an opportunity to promote it. Use some of the schemes that are out there. We've got really good schemes in Ireland, I think, that you can actually, they help you promote your food. If you can get you through the process of promote food. So I do think there's an opportunity certainly there, and it's something that it's going to take time, but yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Deepish, I must go.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Great, lovely to talk to you, Mike. Do contact me when you come to Dublin.
All right, goodbye, Jane. Nice to meet you. Thanks, and regards to Robbie as well.
Of course. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye, Jane.
So, let's have a quick chat.
Bye, Patrick.
Hi, Jan. Thank you very much. So Dan will be joining in a couple of minutes, so we can still chat. So Mike, just talking about the food there, as you can see at the back, the background, you will see Mustang Momo Ireland, right? So that is an initiative where to introduce Momo to Ireland. So the idea is basically you have outlets, different restaurants, and you take orders through that website.
Yeah.
And you would have, so then once you get an order, then you just basically pass on to different restaurants and so on.
Yeah.
So that's an idea. So maybe we can talk about this too at some point, because at these days now with the pandemic, I think the online takeaway, the online order is more popular than dine-in, at least maybe for a couple of even a year. So it's great. Your idea, I think, is wonderful. So we will have a chat. So as you might know, Ireland Nepal Chamber of Commerce, just at the top of here, INCC, that's Ireland Nepal Chamber of Commerce, and we are trying to promote businesses too, right? So with this business, as you said, enhancing the lifestyle of Nepalese in Nepal, especially in the remote regions. So it's not about doing things only in country. So if you do things outside the country, so if you build business, like if you are able to export things from Nepal to Ireland and the rest of Europe or the rest of the world, people in Nepal get jobs, right? So you make a factory there. It means that it's an opportunity for everybody. So that's, I think, we can look into at some point. So overall, I think it's a great thing to have a chat with you, and thanks for your time. And it's wonderful to hearing. So I've known that you, right? Means I've heard about a couple of things, and knowing knowing the details of the things that you have done in Nepal and the rest of the world, and what your thought process is wonderful. I think we'll sure be in contact to see if there is any collaboration. And of course, the movies things that you brought up, that's, I think, is very lucrative thing for the country as a whole. I will definitely bring it up with Nepal Tourism Board and concerned authorities and see what we can do in that front. So because the thing is the connection, right? The network. So it's good to have you there.
I think, yeah, the network, and yeah, it's like you, as you're aware, I'm quite happy to help in any of that stuff. I think, you know, we can have a chat offline, and you know,
Yeah.
let's promote. Let's see what we can promote Nepal for. You know,
Yeah.
But I think go with the Momos. I go with the Momos. I want to see them in super value. Okay.
Yeah, that would be the next step. Thanks. Before we wrap up this session, Patrick, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
No, just to thank Mike. I mean, it's been great chatting to you. Another man from Beaufort. Well, I'm not really, but parents anyway. And yeah, no, and very interesting talk. I mean, you know, this whole thing of trying to diversify where people go. I think we have a balance really, because people often go for the trip of a lifetime, and you know, the Everest area or the Annapurna circuit are certainly both two amazing places to go to. But it's just trying to get them to, as you say, add on a few days, or even the next time they come back, because a lot of people go for the mountains but love the people and go back for the people. And you know, it's just trying to diversify where people are going, really. I think would be one way of trying to spread development in Nepal, really, because where money goes, the development will go. So thanks very much, Mike. Good to meet you.
Yeah, no problem. Enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that's great. Again, Mike, thank you very much. So we have, in the next session, we have Dr. Dan McCartney. So he'll be talking about COVID-19, the role of vitamin D in COVID-19 and stuff. So Mike, as you are probably busy, if you have time, you are more than welcome to stay.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to run. I need to get back to work. I am working
Okay,
today.
yeah.
I snuck out for this call. Okay.
Excellent.
Right,
Thank
guys.
you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike. Cheers. Bye. Okay. So